Well, this will surprise you. The top Democratic staffer on the Senate Commerce Committee is leaving for Facebook. According to Politico, John Branscombe will work with Facebook's federal policy team. So he'll make the transition from overseeing tech companies to lobbying on behalf of the social media giant. Well, who knows it better? Now, the hiring of the 11-year veteran Hill and federal communications aide is the latest sign that Facebook will continue poaching Washington elites despite criticism from members of both parties. According to the report, in the past 2 years, Facebook hired staffers from Senators Richard Blumenthal and Dianne Feinstein's office. By hiring Branscombe, it has tapped someone with close ties to Senate Commerce Chair Maria Cantwell, as well as numerous former committee staffers working in President Joe Biden's executive branch. Now, Ryan, a lot is made of like Lina Khan and the appointment of Lina Khan, but Lina Khan is one person, and there's this vast apparatus of people who have gone through the revolving door. So in one respect, this is not a surprising story at all. This is something that happens every day here in Washington, D.C., but it's always worth covering, and I think it's particularly worth covering in this case because this is a top staffer on the committee. It's not just some random Joe. It's a top staffer who's worth a lot of money to Facebook, who's almost certainly getting a lot of money for Facebook, and is then going to have a lot of open ears over on the Hill. Well,
the Lina Khan point is actually related in an interesting way. So it's Lina Khan, Tim Wu, Rohit Chopra moving over to the CFPB, and a handful of other significant tech critics and critics of consolidation are now powering a lot of Biden's trade policy or FTC and antitrust policy. And because there's that much kind of aggressive action on the table, that kind of paradoxically creates more demand for other Democrats who will sell their services to these big tech firms to fight back against them. If you are an antitrust attorney right now, for instance, you have seen the amount of money that you can make in the market in D.C. go up 2 or 3 or 4 or 4 times. The hourly rates that those firms are charging to defend against what Lina Khan and Chopra and others are doing are just absolutely through the roof, because you can't grow antitrust attorneys very quickly, and so the ones that are already kind of
trees.
What you can do is you can try to pluck as many as you can from the Hill. At the same time, unlike 10 years ago, there's now a stigma associated with going to Facebook.
Really?
Yeah,
on the left.
On the left and among Democrats,
That's
Facebook
good.
And other big tech firms. 10 years ago, the reason that a lot of Obama alums sold out to Silicon Valley is because it was still socially acceptable. They didn't want to go. Some went to Goldman, or Zag, or where did he go? Citi. But they were already kind of in the Wall Street world.
Yeah.
But the kind of Obama boys, they felt comfortable going to Silicon Valley in a way they did not feel comfortable going to Wall Street. That's actually a redo in the 1980s. Before the SNL crisis, Wall Street was uncontroversial money.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go to work for the auto companies because the unions and the environmentalists didn't like the auto companies. But Wall Street, it's just some 9-to-5 bankers. That was fine. So the Democrats sold out to Wall Street in the 80s, and they thought there was nothing wrong with that. It repeated itself with Silicon Valley, but now finally there actually is stigma, and so Branscombe, I'm sure, he's heavily compensated for absorbing that.
Yeah.
But it's not a kind of social cost-free move anymore.
Although I question that a little bit now because, big tech has sort of stepped in as the arbitrator of truth for Democrats. And so I think there might be this sort of gateway where they're being demonized a bit less on the left, potentially. But, this whole revolving door, obviously this is a real problem. And this is something that we have to close, this revolving door loop. We've got, because really the purpose of government, we have to remember, is to serve the welfare of the general public. And when these legislators and staffers go and work for the very companies that they've been writing legislation to regulate, it really, how can they possibly be truly legislating on behalf of the people when they're looking out for their own best interests in a couple of years. And I know it's harder to, it's definitely going to be harder to close this loophole when it comes to staffers compared to legislators. I mean, I think with legislators, we could put a lifetime ban on saying you cannot go and work for some company that you actually participated in writing legislation to regulate. But it's going to be harder to do that with staffers. But those staffers are so, they're so entrenched. And we've got to, but they're still being paid by our tax dollars. We've got to be able to regulate this and say, you cannot do this. You worked for us. You keep working for us. You're not going to go work for them and, and look out for your own best interests. You got to look out for the American people. And you're just not doing that when you're doing this whole revolving door thing.
I think that one thing you should do is pay staffers better.
Yeah, I was going to say. Although there's nothing you could do in this case to be competitive with the salary Facebook is offering.
Well, there is one thing you could do.
Oh, yeah.
Tax the hell out of them.
Tax the hell out of Facebook.
Tax the hell out of the employee. So let's say if you spend 5 years working on Capitol Hill making this public money, then in the years after you leave, you paid 99% marginal tax rate on every dollar that you make above what you were making on Capitol Hill, because you're making that money because the public paid for you to get all of this experience. So you can make a fairness argument that it's not fair for you to take all this public money to work on Capitol Hill, to do God knows what, because you knew you were about to go work on K Street, and then you're making $1 million a year thanks to the money that the public spent training you on how to be a congressional staffer and how to write legislation. So therefore, pay it back. You're taxed 99% on that excess money that you're making on our dime.
So the problem with
those tech companies are so big, they'll just pay it. Well, okay,
fine,
we'll just sweeten the deal for you.
Tax that too.
The problem would be it would be hard to I love the idea. I think it would be hard to distinguish between the people who are going to lobby for, I would say, aphorists, genuinely, these are.
They're not going to make $1 million bucks.
Right, just threw his pen at me.
They're not going to make $1 million a year. They're going to make.
So you're saying make it based on income level?
Right. Okay. Exactly.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And what's interesting is the staffers, I think, are actually a bigger threat than the members, because they actually know what the hell is going on with these bills and with these industries, because they're the ones that are holding the meetings. They're the ones that are having these conversations. And if you look at lobbying disclosures, you can see that that's true over and over again. So, this is, I don't know, I think this is a big story because not just because of what it says more broadly, but in and of itself that Facebook now employs a former top congressional aide on these issues.
And Kim, that's an interesting point on the censorship question. My read on it, at least in Washington, is that Democrats, that the idea that big tech is censoring conservatives is a conservative talking point, and that even to the extent that there's truth to it, Democrats don't believe it.
But there is truth to it.
It doesn't matter if it's true. Democrats don't believe it, is my point. And so Democrats in Washington think that big tech is they want it. They want them to be censoring conservatives more than they are. And to the extent that they're not doing it more than they are, then then you get no valor for going to work for these companies that Democrats don't think are doing enough to censor conservatives.
Which is why the Hunter story got suppressed in the lead up to 2020, because those tech companies were so shaken by the criticism they got from the left with the Hillary Clinton story in 2016. And so, I think that is a really good point. And by the way, it is stigmatized on the right now as well to do the same thing. So that's a really
interesting perspective. You have to pay higher to get through that stigma.
Got to pay higher. So that's good news for some people.
Indeed. Congratulations to everybody cashing out. And we'll have more Rising right after this.